This week, how safe is your face? Pinpointing pollutants. And I'm not sure you're pointing that hairspray the right way, Lara. Facial recognition. Tech that can identify someone from their face is fast becoming a thing. This biometric ID has been used, albeit together with passports, at immigration control in airports. In Dubai, they want to do this without the gates, allowing passengers to walk more easily through the airport. And it's also found its way into apps as an alternative to the password for validating a payment. Face recognition could also be coming to shops too. In China, Alibaba recently premiered their Smile to Pay system at a KFC store. But unlike our passports, PIN codes or passwords, our faces are on public display pretty much all of the time. And that makes it possible for the authorities or anyone else to automatically identify us in any public space. Something which you may not be surprised to hear they're quite interested in doing. Dan Simmons has been looking at the preparations being made by several governments to do this. And to start with, you've been to Germany.
Yeah, it seems that we could be moving towards a biometric CCTV sort of state. And one of the places where it's first happening, which may surprise you, is in Berlin.
Catching a train in the German capital today means you may be caught on CCTV, perhaps while stamping your paper ticket. Neither system automatically tracks your movements. At the very least, that requires human intervention. But arrive at Südkreuz in the south of the city and your face will be scanned and analysed by computers. The testing of facial recognition systems began here last month, but the authorities aren't looking for criminals just yet.
And they're not really looking for me either. Around 200 volunteers have had their faces scanned and been given a location tracker, so the authorities know when they pass through here, and they can see how often the cameras can pick them up just by looking at their faces. If the system's accurate enough, then the next stage would be to use it much more widely, which for many people here would be a breach of their privacy, being constantly monitored with no easy opt-out.
The Germans have a history of being watched. This old US listening station in Berlin was how the West kept tabs on East Germany. On the ground below, first the Nazis and then the Stasi in East Germany kept files on the population filled by informants. So since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the decommissioning of ID checkpoints, Berliners have been fiercely protective of their privacy. What's changed is that a new threat has replaced the old. Police control the crowds in the aftermath of a terrorist attack. A truck has mowed down shoppers at a Christmas market in Berlin. 12 are killed and more than 50 injured. At this time, CCTV is still not widely used in public areas. But 3 months later, in March this year, the government passes new laws to extend their use, and the face recognition pilot was given the go-ahead. Despite the trial offering a white route that passengers can take to avoid the cameras, both the country's data commissioner and its top lawyers have expressed concern about Germany moving towards a surveillance state. No one is saying facial recognition couldn't help catch criminals, but the public doesn't seem to have been asked. As Germany goes to the polls this weekend, one member of the coalition who has been in power told me he wasn't consulted about the trial, and the technology hasn't been properly debated in Parliament.
It doesn't bring more security, it is just collecting data and more, and you don't know who, when, where this data may be used. It is a pill they try to give to the people which doesn't have any effect because it doesn't solve the problems.
Proponents of the scheme point to the dip in crime on Berlin's metro system following the installation of CCTV back in 2011. We did ask both the German Interior Ministry and the police authorities in Berlin for an interview and to take a look at the technology, but both declined. So we asked a few travellers.
I don't trust these systems. I don't trust this new development. Like, everybody should be tracked and everybody should be scanned by cameras.
They showed in TV that if you have a base cap or sunglasses that it doesn't work anymore, so maybe not so much. But anyway, if it catches one, we are very happy.
If it really shows that it will help, then I will be okay with this, in the hope that there is no misuse and no tracking, just collecting tracking data.
If those worries are widespread, it's not looking good. Questions still hang over whether the German police fabricated their records on the man behind December's terror attack to make them look good. And earlier this month, a Privacy International report said 21 EU member states, including Germany, are still unlawfully collecting and retaining personal data. Who's watching the watchers may be the key question if the technology proves its worth.
OK, well, first up, we are tracked by our phones every day anyway these days, aren't we? So what is the big concern around facial recognition?
Well, and with our phones, of course, we can possibly turn them off, or we could opt to carry a more basic model. So we do have some choices around that. And also it tends to be companies that collect the data. So when the state or the police require that information, they do so on a case-by-case basis. I think the concern here is that if we introduced facial recognition as we have CCTV, then there would be a very broad database, a searchable database, to find out where each person was and with whom whenever they were in public.
OK, although to be fair, it is just a trial. This hasn't actually been released yet.
No, absolutely. It is a trial just on those 250 volunteers and those members of the public that walk through the space where they're captured on camera.
And you've been to another capital city where this technology is already being used by the police to look for real suspects, to find people that they're looking for.
Yeah, here in London, where the most recent trials took place last month.
Carnival time in Notting Hill. The tens of thousands who gather are monitored from above and by officers on the ground. But there are also facial recognition cameras here, and unlike in Berlin, the London trial isn't as visible to the public, and the officers are using it to spot real suspects. The Metropolitan Police declined to show us the technology or to give us an interview, so we spoke to a human rights expert who was invited by officers to witness what happened.
In the 10 minutes that I viewed facial recognition in action, I saw 2 misidentifications, and in fact both of them wrongly identified an innocent woman walking past as a wanted man from the police's database.
Right, so didn't even get the gender right.
No.
And those are false positives, and the police concerned about that?
They weren't worried about that. However, they were running this for 4 days, and the police told us that they had made many false positives. The system had produced many false positives.
Silke says officers told her they'd made 1 correct match in the 4 days of use.
The leads who I met viewed this as a success. They, in their view, as long as they can prove that the software works, i.e. can make a positive match, even if it's making 40 incorrect matches, then it works. That's not a scientific approach. And there's no balance of proportionality, let alone a disregard for the civil liberties issues. To our view, that is not a success.
Some people will say that the technology needs to be tested in real-world circumstances, and this is what the police are doing in this situation. They have to test it, right? And this could be useful in the future.
We all have something to worry about when the police are using intrusive biometric surveillance powers that they don't have a legal basis to use and that they're doing largely in secret. That's a worry. But these kinds of surveillance tools present some really broad concerns, and to simply say, I have nothing to hide, therefore I have nothing to fear, is to unconditionally submit to powers of government that are unchecked. And that is to say, whichever flavour of government comes in, would we be happy with biometric surveillance on our streets? I don't think we would.
London's Metropolitan Police Service told us officers were on hand at the Notting Hill Carnival to answer any questions the public may have about the technology. Only those images which came up as a match to a wanted offender will be retained by the police. They confirmed there were 20 million images on the police national database. But they declined to comment on the effectiveness of the technology.
Well, that's slightly concerning, isn't it? Especially if the software really is that inaccurate. And I guess we haven't had any kind of public debate about whether this technology should be used yet.
No, not really. I mean, the police say that there will be a public consultation. We asked them how long we're going to wait for that, and they said that would happen in due course. So we checked parliamentary records, and although facial recognition has come up for debate within other bits of legislation around anti-terror laws, etc., there's never been any specific debate around the use of facial recognition in public in the UK.
Meanwhile, the technology continues to advance, and researchers are looking at even more complex and advanced algorithms for this sort of
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of examples over the last month. Cambridge University now say they're looking at a system, they've developed a system which could potentially identify people with scarves over their faces or wearing hats. And Stanford University over in the United States, so they've developed algorithms that can look at the results of what comes in through the camera and determine somebody's sexual orientation. So, I mean, you're looking at something potentially in the future when this technology really does start to take off, where you could walk past a camera and you're automatically added to a database. You wouldn't necessarily know about it, and therefore, you know, as your human rights may say, well, you can complain and get something done, you just wouldn't even know that it had happened.
Okay, lots to talk about in the future, unsurprisingly. Dan, thanks. From filming your face to feeding it now, this is London's Borough Market, a foodie's paradise, stuffed to the gills with gourmet grub. But this week, designers from the Royal College of Art alongside inventors have descended on this bustling street market to show off a host of gastronomic gadgets. First up, bottle openers that are supposed to make beer taste better with sound. According to MA student Drew Richards, the flavour will now appear better as a result of the satisfying sound. Instead of mixing vast quantities of a recipe before unveiling it to the public, Professor Haris Makatsouris from Cranfield University has been experimenting with crowdsourcing ingredients using a web game that mimics the stock market.
Having a large number of consumers and playing the game, and in other words telling us what the preferences are for an energy drink, which we then took away and we created the formula bottoms up. Brilliant.
MA student Jun Yeon Cho has created cutlery with handles that can be heated, which claim to slow down children's eating habits. Slower eating has been shown to make us feel fuller more quickly, and it's hoped that these snazzy knives and forks will do just that, encouraging healthier eating habits in children. And finally, over in the kitchen, students from the RCA and Nottingham University hope to capture those family recipes that have been passed down from generation to generation. By analysing video of visitors preparing food and collecting data from accelerometers attached to cooking utensils, recipes will be generated in order to record the way individuals prepare food.
We believe that people are better to articulate their preferences and their ideas around food using their bodies. We're putting sensors in kitchen tools and we capture those ideas and we develop a repository of recipes, which are a series of videos and sensor data.
So those old family recipes need never be lost to the midst of time ever again. Yeah, anyone else peckish now?
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week that Apple released a new version of their operating system, cunningly titled iOS 11. Google announced an £800 million deal with smartphone maker HTC, And Transport for London said they will not renew the licence for ride-hailing company Uber when it expires at the end of September. TfL said the company was not fit or proper to hold a licence. Uber said it will appeal the decision. It was also the week that Prime Minister Theresa May called for technology companies to go further and faster in removing extremist content from the web. The Prime Minister also called for social networks and search engines to find ways to take down terrorist material within 2 hours of publication. And history was made this week as an electric vehicle broke a world record by travelling more than 1,000 miles on a single charge. The 40-foot-long test bus travelled 1,102 miles on a testing ground in Indiana. The company behind the bus has not revealed how fast it was going though, saying only that it travelled slow and steady. And a while ago, we told you about the tragic demise of our good friend Steve, the robot security guard who sadly perished in a Washington fountain. Well, Steve's parents are back and have spawned a new breed. The K7 has been specifically designed to fight crime in large areas with difficult terrain. Will it suffer the same ill fate as Steve? Only steps will tell.
Ah, that is the smell of a killer. Those are the words of London's Mayor Sadiq Khan, who said that London's air pollution is way beyond acceptable levels. You can't really smell much, I know, but the health problems caused by petrol and diesel cars have caused France, the UK, and now this week China to consider banning them in the relatively near future. Lara's up in a few minutes to look at pollution in unexpected places. But first, we're off to West Oakland near San Francisco, another place with lots of diesel pollution and a lot of people with breathing problems. Sumi Das has been meeting the science and tech experts who are trying to pinpoint pollutants.
Can you see them? Harmful pollutants. We can't detect them, but this Google Street View car can. Inside is a mini lab from environmental sensor startup Aclima that monitors air quality.
We have this system that we've mounted onto the Street View camera platform that has both meteorological instrumentation as well as the inlets. This is where we actually sample the gas, the pollution, as we're driving along.
For 1 year, 2 Street View cars, souped up with Aclima tech, crisscrossed West Oakland, California, roughly 12 square kilometers bordered by freeways and home to a bustling port and families. 37,000 kilometers and some serious number crunching later, researchers had this detailed pollution map. Stephen Hamburg of the Environmental Defense Fund, a partner in the project, explains how.
You need fast response instruments, so they're collecting data every second. And then you need the analytical capability to actually then use that data to actually map it in a way that's just characterizing that local spot.
Each dot represents about 30 meters. The color indicates air quality. The darker the dot, the dirtier the air. Red dots cluster around hotspots like this metal recycling plant and this busy intersection. Researchers hope this data will spur governments to start regulating. City officials could divert diesel vehicles away from schools or retime traffic lights so lorries aren't idling.
All this equipment crammed into this car, it's high-precision stuff, and it's pricey. Too pricey to put on a fleet of vehicles. So Aclima developed a sensor system to measure pollution levels. That system will be about 100 times cheaper and about the size of a couple of shoeboxes.
Imagine adding air pollution as a layer in your mapping app.
It starts with the measurements, of course, and the number of times we would need to sample a region to get something that we feel is baseline for that area, and then understanding the variability around that baseline.
It's ambitious and a massive big data challenge. For now, Aclima has a real-time tracking tool, and that's more than just a breath of fresh air.
It's easy to think of air quality as an outdoor issue, but maybe it's time that we start to think about the air that we're breathing inside our own homes. Air pollution comes in many forms. In our homes, that includes outdoor polluted air coming in through open windows, as well as being caused by cooking, lighting candles, burning incense, or the use of everyday products. So to test a couple of the latest indoor air quality trackers, I've enlisted the help of Professor Roy Harrison, an expert on the matter who also has his professional air quality monitoring kit to hand. So first off, time to take a base reading. Firstly, we have the FooBot.
This gives us 3 different pollutant measurements. It gives us particulate matter, except that it's not telling us what size fraction it's measuring. We're getting a little less than that on our device. We're getting between 5 and 10 micrograms per cubic metre, but it looks like a very plausible reading.
And Netatmo's Healthy Home Coach.
In terms of air quality, this device is measuring carbon dioxide. Slightly strange because from a health perspective, it's not one of the pollutants we're very concerned with. Some health relevant pollutants will be high when carbon dioxide is high, but others won't.
Although the professor did add that this reading was too low to be plausible. For our first experiment, let's burn some toast. Things are really peaking. There's quite a reaction there to burnt toast.
Those are very high concentrations. It's sort of Beijing type air quality in here at the moment, not London.
So let's take a look at what the other devices have been tracking, the Netatmo.
So actually, no, it hasn't reacted at all to this smoking episode, but then burning toast doesn't generate much carbon dioxide unless you actually set fire to it.
Fair enough. The FooBot turned from blue to red halfway through that toast being made, so it obviously knew there was a problem. In terms of the readings, what do you make of those?
If we look at the volatile organic compounds, that's gone up about tenfold, and that's very plausible. I'm just surprised that the particulate matter, which is still reading 17.5 micrograms per cubic metre, really hasn't responded. So maybe it's very slow, I don't know, but you do have the advantage that you're measuring 3 pollutants and the device has given us its red warning.
On to experiment 2, and luckily the professor was happy to play along. The hairspray didn't cause a reaction from the Netatmo's CO2 sensor, whilst it did alarm the FooBot's triple sensors.
So it is responding to particulate matter. The volatile organic compounds, which I would imagine would be the main component of the hairspray, up to 8,400. So that's gone up a lot from the background, but it's not hugely high. But what's very strange is the carbon dioxide has gone up to 30,000 ppm. Which is a level that would worry me to be breathing, quite honestly.
It is a little hard to breathe in here at this moment.
It's a huge level.
It's all very well knowing the quality of the air you're breathing, but you may want to do something about it. Now, a device like this aims to purify the air by first of all tracking it so it knows what the quality is at any given time, and if that quality is poor, it'll do more purifying to bring it up to a good level, and if the air quality is okay, then it can pause. The Dyson Pure Cool Link does come with a hefty price tag, and this model is the size of a not-so-small child. Its motor aims to draw the polluted air into the device before filtering it and dispersing the clean air back into the room.
Well, clearly we had a spike in the pollution level, but it hasn't gone as high as in our earlier spraying experiment. And I'm impressed that it's coming down very much more quickly than before.
And we've moved from very poor to poor on here. So my tests seem to indicate the rather odd result that fixing the problem may prove simpler than actually monitoring it.
That was Lara, and before her, Sumi Das in California. That's it for this week. Don't forget we live on Facebook and on Twitter at BBC Click, so you can check us out throughout this week and every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.